You are listening to the Home Service Business Success Show. We have been accelerating the path of success for home service companies since 2011.
If I don't talk about how stressed I am, then I must not be a high producer.
When that becomes the norm and the way of life, that's where we see people just literally get just toasted in the industry.
Either you are serving the business or the business is serving you. You know which one of those is true right now.
Hold up. I think we made it all the way to episode 10.
Hey, my friends, welcome back to Home Service Business Success. This is the show if you are in the home service space or interested in the home service space as we live it, breathe it, love it, do it every single day. Chris Crew alongside with me. Good to have you, my man.
Hey, man, we made it another episode. Here we are again. This is exciting.
Number 10, baby. Number 10. And today, hey, check it out. If you're not used to podcasting, you could be 10 episodes in and going, damn, I'm exhausted, man. And here's the deal. We're just getting started. We're bringing you, season 1, and then we're going to listen to you about what you want for future seasons and different things like that. But today we want to talk about exhaustion in the service business. Chris, it's such a big thing. It's such a challenging topic. And specifically within exhaustion, let's talk about calming the chaos when we look at, my gosh, you just there's so many moving components and there's so much going on and there's so much burnout that is prevalent today. There's some people that are flat burnt right now. And we see it with blue collar members, any kind of trade that you use yourself that comes into your home. Like, there's a lot of stuff going on out there. How do we tame this thing? How do we calm this chaos, bro?
Yeah, I'm going to say this, go back to my days of being in the field and, working a 12, 14 hour day was no big deal. I'd go home, 12, 14 hour day, body'd be tired, eat dinner, relax, hop in the bed, get up, take a shower, do it all over again the next day. And so there's a component of doing that for a certain amount of days straight. I remember, back where I'd be working 60, 70, 75, 80 hours a week, as a service tech in the field. And that type of exhaustion was different than when I was an owner and an operator. I'd work the 10, 12-hour days early in, first out concept, trying to prove my point and grind it out and setting the tone and setting the pace. And everybody will follow me if they do that. And all you're doing is you're driving yourself mentally to exhaustion, which then ends up crippling you physically. And that's why we see so much in the service industry of people with health challenges. And I don't even want to go into the mental health crisis that our country's facing right now, but I'd like to say, while I believe a lot of it is self-inflicted, I'm not going to blame anyone today. What I'm going to say is today is not about placing the blame. Today is about taking ownership.
Yeah, 100%. And I would say, I have massive empathy and compassion for the exhaustion in the industry. Here's the reality. There's a collective agreement in society that burnout is not only acceptable, but it's kind of expected. If I'm not really tired, Chris, if I'm not really burnt, if I don't talk about how stressed I am, then I must not be a high producer. I must not be a high performer.
Or Kenny, it's almost like I'm bragging about all the kids' activities and family activities and all the holidays. I brag about having to miss those as if it creates a level of value within myself. And it's cool in the beginning, but when that becomes the norm and the way of life, that's where we see people just literally get just toasted in the industry. And I'd say this. Don't be the candle that burns out. If you got into this industry with passion and desire to make a difference, and different people get in, and I think let's just back that up for a minute. Why did you even get in the industry? Because your why, I have found, Kenny, my why can change, 100% can change, but my why has been my driving force to not allow the chaos to get out of hand into the point where I can't reel it back when I need to. And I had self-awareness to recognize, once again, once I've missed a certain amount of family events, I got to draw the line in the sand. And you as the owner, you as the manager, you're the only one that will create that boundary. The business won't create the boundary for you. It's just going to keep steamrolling you. And so you got to draw some lines in the sand. And today in episode 10, that's what I'm looking for you to come to the mental awareness that you got to draw the line in the sand.
You know, in my last book, Blue Collar Success Laws, law number 7, that it's all wrapped up and wrapped around is essential self-care, because that is where you calm the chaos, is when you're taking care of yourself. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, somebody is serving something. What do I mean by that? Either you are serving the business or the business is serving you. And I'm going to let that just land, and I'm going to say it again. Either you are serving the business or the business is serving you. You know which one of those is true right now. And we've talked before, it doesn't mean that there aren't seasons and you're out of balance a little bit, but you're in harmony because you're working on your vision. But we celebrate so much as a culture that busy equals productive and stress equals valuable. The more stressed I am, the more valuable I am to the company. And it reminds me of all the way back, you know, we're here, we are in 2025 dropping episodes, Chris. And in 2007, I took a 6.5-month motorhome trip. And I took a sabbatical from my service business. I didn't walk through the doors for 6.5 months. I even flew back to my market because my sister decided to get married in my backyard at my house. But I had set this goal. I wasn't going to go to my business. So I flew back and didn't go to the company. I was back in town for like 4 days for her wedding at my house and flew back out. And in 2007, when I went through that, I was speaking about once a month. I had a gig where I would speak in the industry about once a month. And people would come up to me and they were loving it. Like, you know, we've talked in previous episodes, when you make it look easy, people are like, oh my God, I want your life. I want to get in a motorhome and travel with and I would go, no, you don't. I want to live like you do, Kenny. And I'd go, no, you don't. Well, what do you mean? Yeah, I really do. And I said, no, you don't. Why? Because I get value from my team being empowered and them knowing the answers and them being able to make decisions on the behalf of the company and them knowing who they are and what they're accountable to. I get value from that. You, my friend, person talking to me at the time, you get value from having all of those answers and knowing exactly what you asked me a question. I go, I don't know. I'd have to ask John. I don't know. I'd have to ask Robin. I don't know. I'd have to ask Ray. I don't know. I'd have to ask Doug. I don't know. I'd have to ask Mark. Fast forward to today, blue collar. I don't know. I'd have to ask Chris. I don't know. I'd have to ask Chelsea. I don't know. I'd have to ask Jeremy.
Oh, Chris would have to say, I don't know. I'm going to have to ask Jeremy. I don't know. I'm going to have. Why? Because
there's about 3 things that you could answer, and then you'd have to go. And so my point is that you've got to decide where you're willing to play full out. So I get judged as being lazy. I'm not on social media personally anymore. I get judged as not being checked into the game of business. I have never, let me let this be super clear. I have never been as effective as I am today in business. I've never been as clear about who I am. I've never had the clarity of vision of the 25-year vision we have in the 10-year plan that we're executing in our primary companies. I've never been this dialed. But many of you that don't know me look and go, that dude's really checked out. He just has a team that busts their ass for him. There's no doubt I got a team that busts their ass for me. And some of that is because of how checked I am into what matters most to me and also matters to the team.
what doesn't make sense in your business right now? Where are the areas that are draining you? What are the areas? I'm going to call it who are the team members that
Oh,
are
there's the
draining you,
who's.
right?
Yeah.
And we go to the who's, because a lot of times it's not the business that drains you. It's the who's in the business that do drain you. And it could be, certain clients. It could be, maybe you've got high paying clientele that won't access to you. And, it's like, I'll never forget when I left the field. This is prior to moving. This is back when my days in Atlanta. There were accounts that I had, and I'm not trying to say that I'm somebody, but I had certain accounts that clients would not let anybody else in the home. So, and when they try to send another technician to the home, customer be like, I'm sorry, Chris is the only one that comes here.
Right.
Because I was so dedicated to nurturing the relationship, in so much that when I left, we had to schedule service appointments at those accounts and me take the new electrician to introduce them and get them familiar with the home of all the work we've been doing. And I'd say this, for the average technician, those accounts would just wear them down. But I enjoyed it because I'm like, I'm in unique ability. I built a great relationship here.
Right.
I don't need to sell anymore. I just show up. And I'll never forget Wesley. I won't call his last name, but Wesley was he was an NFL player, and he was a All-American linebacker at the University of Notre Dame the year that they won their national championship. Some of you might know his name now, last name, but his wife, she was such a sweetheart. And every time I would go in there, Wesley was never around. Met Wesley a few times, but not a lot of interaction with him, but always dealt with his wife. And I'll never forget, she'd have her baby on her shoulder, right? And I'm trying to run my process, right? And she's like,
yeah.
Chris, can you just show me the price and let me sign? And I'm like, yeah, but you got to understand. And see, sometimes those types of relationships, whether it be I'm a service manager and it's a high performing technician, or I'm a call center manager and it's someone who can't be consistent at showing up, or I'm a general manager and it's my accounting, it's somebody that's creating chaos for you in some cases, or it's something that is creating chaos. So when we go back, chaos leads to exhaustion. It sucks the energy out of you at every interaction. Anytime you deal with the situation or you deal with the individual, it sucks the energy out of you. So Kenny, why don't we just back this thing up a little bit? Let's talk about what are some signs of potential burnout happening due to chaos. What are some things that you see from your perspective that kind of start to lead toward this happening?
I think for me, Chris, one of the things, and I see it in the clients that I still work with, I see it in myself, where there's magnified agitation, I'll call it. I believe that all suffering begins with the mind. And I think that in business, we suffer when we have an agitated mind, and we just have this, to your point, you've got this chaos. And though I'm not on social media anymore, I still have a lot of things coming at me. And you think about go back to old school marketing impressions and, how many times you'd get hit with something. Now it's tenfold. You have things coming at you all the time. And so your brain is kind of rewired to this, like the whole fight or flight kind of thing, where you're always on. And therefore we start developing this feeling that we always have to be on. And I know for me, when I first started getting control of my mind and started getting control of my chaos, it felt weird. It felt odd to not be stressed. It felt odd because, let's be clear, when I was on my 6-month motorhome trip, I checked out of the business, but I was still stressed. I was in a new relationship. The lovely Christy and I were getting to know each other. And that was part of the point of taking the trip, was I'm like, I want to make sure this relationship's good.
Hold up. Pause that thought. I think we made it all the way to episode 10 before hearing that individual's name being brought up in that.
The lovely Christy. And
we made it 10 episodes. I was one. I didn't have a bet on it, but I did have in the back of my mind, I wonder how far we get because of the relationship that you guys have and how integrated she is into everything in your life. Much is true with any good, healthy relationship, how integrated people are into personal life and business. I didn't mean to digress there, but this.
No, and that's true. And I call her the lovely Christy because of, I just coined her with that it makes sense to me. And she's been a help for me also in calming the chaos and knowing, the indicators of, notice if you're snapping at your kids quickly, notice if something that isn't that big of a deal. We had something recently and that I got to navigate with one of our leaders that I had a call with it, and I was like, this doesn't seem to be this big of a deal. And they were pretty triggered and so on. And then I got to talk to him later on and I was like, that just kind of helping you see through. And then I was like, I would have thought it would have been a bigger deal like X, Y, or Z. And then they're like, well, actually there's a Y going on, but you haven't. And so my point is to be elevating your consciousness enough to know when I'm not at my peak performance, knowing when I'm starting to kind of lose control over my emotions, or I'm, not responding, I'm reacting. I'm not allowing that space between the two, brother.
Well, this, and I didn't even know we were going to go there, but EQ leads to ER. I want you to remember that. EQ leads to ER. Your emotional quotient or your emotional intelligence allows you to be emotionally regulated. If I can be aware of who I am in certain situations and what I've learned and what I know not to put myself in certain situations where, can I handle myself? 100%. I can emotionally regulate myself in that situation. But I'm asking myself the question, how does Chris benefit when I insert myself into that situation? And if I don't benefit at all, I just don't insert myself into the situation. Example, you're a general manager and you've got a service manager who has an issue with a team member. And while you know that you could help fix the challenge by inserting yourself in there, it creates a situation where you're taking on emotion and it triggers emotion in you that you're not happy with. Why would you insert yourself in the situation? Because you can fix it? Well, that's what once again leads to the chaos component, because I'm allowing outside influences to, we're in a world today where everything's coming at us in all fronts.
Yeah.
Right. In all fronts. And so now more than ever, the influence of other people on ourselves goes back to this. I think sometimes, Kenny, it's just simply because people are overworked, because they've been listening to, I'm not going to say any names, but believing that grinding it out. And listen, I love it. And if it works for them, kudos. I never forget 50 Cent's talking about being in the studio. And he went like, I'll forget the details of the story, but he went like 24 hours straight in the studio. And they were like, hey, yo, 50, you need to take a break, man. You need to take a break. And he's like, break? He's like, what do you take a break for? Like, you need to sleep. He was like, sleep? I'm going to sleep when I die. It's like, I understand that mentality. I truly do, Kenny. And I can have that mentality as long as I understand that I'm going to run as fast as I can on the treadmill. And we talked about this in the past.
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it at an unending destination. Like, you got to tell me where the destination is. I can stop running at a full sprint. And in many cases, a lot of times people overwork themselves because they believe the grind, I'm going to call it the grind, just part of the game, Kenny. If you're going to be a business owner, you got to get in the grind.
Yeah, and when there's no end in sight, I think we've got to have hope. We've got to have goals. We've got to have things we're looking at. And that's a great point. And let's get intimate for a minute with everybody from a standpoint of, I talked about in my past where I ran like crazy getting my service business off the ground. And once I did, I handed the baton and I was like, it's yours. You figure it out, because I didn't launch this business to run it all the time. And then we fast forward to blue collar, and I ran like crazy for a decade. And then as I was handing the baton to you, you said that to me and you're like, look, dude, I'll run on the treadmill like crazy, but I can't do it forever. And I was conscious enough at that time to know that I didn't want to do to you what I had done to previous leaders. And I didn't want to have that experience. And I had elevated my consciousness and I'm better adjusted. So I don't want pain for you or anybody on the blue collar team or our clients. It's why we exist. And so we had to kind of have that conversation. And then there's been different times. And so you, the listener today, if you're watching us, know that with your own team. First and foremost, I had to know it was time for me. I could have stayed just Christy and I and an assistant and cut back my workload and went, we're not going to add clients. We're just going to, do a few events and we're going to, I could have done that. That could have been a choice that I made. However, I don't have that choice within me because I love community and I love team and I had to build this into a business. Don't have children. I want to have, so that wasn't an option. So we look at this option and go, okay, now I had to do what I had to do. I also had to know where I had to get onto a different treadmill. Chris, you've had to go from treadmill to treadmill at different times, sometimes being able to slow down a little bit or grab a quick drink of water, but then continuing to run. And now you've got your delegation in play. And so I just want our listeners to know that calming the chaos is a very focused based thing that doesn't happen overnight, but you've got to make a decision, which from the Latin word decide, which means to cut off, that I'm going to do this forever, that I'm going to run like crazy forever, that I'm going to accept burnout as part of the service business, that I know my team's always going to be stressed out and that's going to create a lot of turnover. It doesn't have to be that way.
I used to believe, Kenny, that if I don't do it, nobody else can put their best foot forward. So I got to outwork everybody in the business because I set that tone. And, I've even had recent conversations with team members here at Blue Collar where I'll say things like, hey, just so you're aware, you may get an email from me at 9:00 at night. That doesn't mean that I'm sitting at a desk working. It just means I had a thought and I need, or something needed to be taken care of. And I went ahead and emailed you.
You're wrapping up dinner at Poblano's. That's what's happening.
Exactly. And I had a thought. I was wrapping up dinner at Poblano's. Big shout out to my favorite Mexican restaurant here in town. But the point that I had to make is I had to circle back because team members would reply to my emails at 9:00 at night, 10:00 at night, 8:00 at night, 7:00 at night. Doesn't matter the time. Quote, I'm going to call after working hours. They're replying to emails. And I might say as an owner, hell yeah, it's about time people started working with my work ethic. Or I could be saying, oh no, I have set the tone in this business that when I send an email late at night, you've got to be checking email and responding. And listen, if you run your organization like that and in that type of environment culture, I'm not saying that it's bad. I'm just telling you it's not the culture that I was trying to create at Blue Collar. So I had to have a communication with the team of just because you get an email from me after hours doesn't mean I expect a response. If there's something hot and it's hot and I know it's hot, we're going to talk about that before and I'm going to let you know as soon as I get what's going on here, I'm going to email you tonight, then you can take care of it. And so that goes back to doing what? Having unclear boundaries. And managers and owners create chaos without clear boundaries.
Yes.
They're designed, by the way, it's designed to keep you in your lane. And I'm going to use that air quotes, your lane, your level of responsibility. In addition to that, it keeps people out of your lane.
Yes.
So when you have people trying to merge into your lane, doing things in the business that they probably shouldn't be doing, just had a great conversation with a team member yesterday, and he had all these ideas about. I was like, whoa. I was like, hey, I'm not saying that I don't want you to look at the big picture, but I want you to focus on the road that you're navigating right now, and I want you to imagine that it's team members. And everybody is set on their own path and their own destination. The moment that they're looking across to see what the sales department's doing, I'm looking to see what the install department's doing. I'm looking at the call center and I'm seeing where they're at. I'm taking my eyes off of my lane.
Yeah.
And so what happens is it's hard for me to delegate because I'm too focused on everything going on around me that I can't focus on. You said this in the beginning of it. and I'm just going to go ahead and mention it. As a leader, most people believe that they have to be selfless, which means all the team comes before me. And I'm going to flip the script on it today. We're going to turn it on its head. And I'm going to say, if you put everybody else in front of you and you come last, as a leader, you're never going to be a good resource for your team. It'll be few and far between because you're going to be depleted of energy, your thoughts. And so I understand the concept of I'm going to carry the team. I'm going to carry the team. But what it does is it leads to burnout. It leads to chaos. And so you got to be good at being selfish so that you can be selfless, meaning I'm going to take care of me. I'm going to make, and listen, Kenny, you know this, come hell or high water, Chris is going to eat lunch. I'm not missing a meal, because if I miss a meal, I'm aware of my personal ability to focus. I like if I'm hungry and I'm starving and we're stretching out a meeting till 2:00 in the afternoon, I'm literally going to be like, hey, I'm cool with having the meeting, but I need you to understand I'm going to eat while we're meeting. That's how important self-care is to me. I need to make sure that Kenny, at events and stuff late at night, our clients want to hang out at the bar till 12:00. I can't do that, man. I'd love to hang out. And you might think that I'm being selfish right now, and I am. But I'm being selfish so that I can be my best self tomorrow on stage for you.
And that, yeah, exactly. And I think, you can unpack those words in different ways where, when I write about self-care, when I think about essential self-care, I'm talking about being selfless and self-full, where the world calls selfish, like, oh, it's all about you. It has to be about you, to your point, in order to be about other people, where and I get it. Oh, leaders eat last and all. That's all fine, because we're looking at being a servant leader and doing those things for our team, but you've got to take care of yourself first. And so, next episode, we're going to talk about deeper strategies, but I want to mention today, when you said that, Chris, about boundaries, I want everybody to understand that I know I'm a slow learner, but here's one of the things that took me a long time to learn. There's a difference between boundaries and barriers. And so in the service business, we need both. In your leadership, you need both. But for Kenny, as a leader of self-multiplying companies, where the first goal was to get self-managing, then we go self-multiplying, to where it does not, if I leave the planet today, blue collar will continue to scale. There's no question in my mind. My ego wants.
Let me stop you for a minute right there. There's a nugget. Owners, hear me out right now. I don't plan on leaving this planet anytime soon, but nobody knows when their number gets called. And I'm saying to you, if you really want to take care of your team, you need to have a succession plan in place of what the business looks like to continue to serve your family and its team members. So there's a little nugget there. Keep going.
Great point. And I know my hope is that blue collar scales more efficiently, more effectively, and more fun while I'm on the planet. But there's no doubt that it continues to grow without me. That was the goal. Now then I didn't share my schedule. I didn't want team knowing what I was doing. I had all of these things around, which now I understand were actually barriers to connected to another success law aligned accountability. I needed to be accountable to my own stuff. So now what's cool is I live with boundaries in my life. My self-care ritual every single morning for the last 5+ years, that's a boundary. There's no doubt that I'm going to do my ritual. There's boundaries on my calendar, certain things that I'm committed to have to happen, certain things I'm committed to cannot happen. And so I used to see anything on my calendar was a barrier to my freedom, because I thought I got in business to have freedom, and anything that's not, just doing anything I want anytime was a barrier. But you need to embrace boundaries. Then we can really calm the chaos. And we'll kind of go a little deeper with some strategies next session. But Does that, am I even saying that right? Is that coming out the way that I'm trying to voice it, Chris? I'm not sure if I just
Yeah.
confused everybody more than not.
No, the start of creating boundaries is creating personal boundaries, and I don't mean like, well, in personal life as well. I don't want to jump off the deep end on that. I mean, we could probably do a whole season on personal life stuff around boundaries, but when I say boundaries, unclear boundaries, what is and is not acceptable. If I'm in the middle of a meeting, my team knows that if you call me and I don't answer, you got to send me a text message or you got to leave me a voicemail. Don't call and not do anything after that. I'm not going to call you back. I'm going to make the assumption that you butt dialed me, which I know that, I don't even know where that saying came from, because if you put your phone in your back pocket, it doesn't call anybody. Maybe in the old days when it had buttons on it, maybe sorry, we're digressing on that. But goes back to calendar creates personal boundaries.
Yes.
And team members need to understand what is and is not acceptable as a part of the culture. And then that goes back to, now that there's boundaries, I'll never forget my famous saying, and I still use it here today at Blue Collar. When I delegate a position, example, Dan, my call center manager, when I gave him full responsibility, I leaned over the desk as though I had a set of keys in my hand, and I did like this. And I said, "Hey, Dan, here's the keys to a really fast car. We have built this machine to go extremely fast, and we built this machine to handle very well. Drive it like a sports car. I mean, drive it hard. But here's the white line, and here's the yellow line. Don't crash it." And so I'm saying that in short order. I would explain what the white lines and yellow lines were. Those are the boundaries. Stay within the boundaries. And I said, "Hey, I don't care if you do donuts in the middle of the road on your way to the destination. If you can get it inside the white line, yellow line, do what you want to do." And this goes back to not establishing non-negotiables with your team. What are non-negotiables with your team? Unacceptable. If you do this, you are outside the boundary. It's got to be black and white. It can't be gray. And so that goes back to delegation. Now, when you delegate, if you don't communicate effectively, and I'm going to say this, that all frustration occurs when expectations do not align. When I delegate something, and Kenny, you do it the way you thought, and I wanted it done another way, but I didn't tell you that, I'm going to be frustrated. Now you're going to be frustrated with me because I'm going to project on you.
Right.
And all I've done is created additional chaos. Because when I delegate, and here's your little nugget. When you're delegating, there are levels of delegation. We're not even going to get into that. But when you delegate, this is something that I found to be super helpful. After you delegate something, I like to do it this way. Kenny, in your own words, could you feed that back to me, what you believe the task at hand is, along with all the non-negotiables?
Getting clarity.
Right there. It just creates clarity. And so that, once again,
that's aligned accountability. That's where it brings in that alignment, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's so powerful. I think that there's so many areas, and I want to talk about how we can piggyback this in another episode. Cause I feel like I said early on, we're not Joe Rogan or whatever, little Joe Rogan without the 4-hour episodes and the dope smoking on screen. But I feel like this is one of those we could go a while on, but we want to break it up. We want to keep you rolling and rocking. And I want to come back, Chris, in the future, and I want to go a little deeper with this boundary thing, because I think we need some boundaries. You said setting them for our team, but as owners and leaders, we better have some boundaries for ourselves when it comes to what we've set for our team, because many of us think we can do anything we want because we're the owner or the top leader. And that's not true, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to keep calmness within the business and not, sometimes, we talked about it before, if you're a big firefighter, you're a big arsonist. A lot of times we see that. Well, you don't understand. There's always chaos in my business. That's because you are chaotic. And I will say that with absolute love and compassion and empathy, because I've been that chaotic. And then I transferred it to others. And now we want calmness throughout. And I want that for you. And I think we could do another episode similar to this, Chris. And let's start wrapping up today.
Next episode that we're going to focus on, Kenny, 100%. I've got to talk about my relationship with my wife that's in this business. The next episode, I'd like for us to unpackage a little bit about family operators, whether husband and wife, brother, sister, sister, father, son. Doesn't matter the relationship. I'm just going to strictly talk how to manage and create boundaries that create chaos, that overflow into the personal life and can create a lot of disruption to the relationship without creating the proper boundaries in the personal and professional space. I'm going to talk about that in the next episode if you'll allow me to do that. Remember, success is sustainable only when you're calm and you're focused on keeping yourself in control. That's the only way success is sustainable.
You said it earlier. 2 key words that changed my life forever: emotional regulation. Yeah. I used to have super high highs and super low lows. And it's not like I'm just bouncing along all vanilla. I love the dopamine hits too. And I love to have that's super exciting. And oh man, that really sucks. That's all fine. But the emotional regulation is what it's really all about. So you don't have to live in this chaos. You can absolutely get to a state of homeostasis in the service business. We're so honored you're playing the game with us. We're going to come back next week and we're going to continue on. We're going to talk about energy a little bit more, and let's get to, okay, fine, I got it some calm, but I want to be energized. I want to have fun doing this, Chris, and let's rock and roll. So thank you, brother, playing full out. This is such a blast to do with you. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us and riding along and taking this journey with us. We're done here, and we will see you next time. Thanks so much for being here. Have a better and fantastic week. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.